This video is brought to you by Incogni. More on that in a moment. I don't need to talk about Trump and why his cabinet of overly conniving yet incredibly underqualified goons are dangerous for the average American. If you're on this channel, you're probably well aware of the damage they've already done and the potential vectors for so much more. Instead, I want to ask you to think about something else. Take the focus off of Trump for a second and really think about who poses more danger, the devil or his advocates. The term devil's advocate is often used to describe someone representing an idea that they might not believe themselves, but feel a need to bring up in an argument as a counterpoint to be fair and balanced, so on and so forth. But the phrase itself, like many annoyances we still have to deal with today, dates back to medieval Catholicism. During the canonization process of sainthood, there would be someone appointed to the position of devil's advocate to criticize and analyze the character of someone who had been proposed for canonization. It was the job of the devil's advocate to oppose the advocate of God, to find fault in the supposed miracles that surrounded the saint-to-be. The term speaks for itself then, but the original purpose was to literally play the role of a fake emissary of Satan. And these advocates had massive amounts of sway over the actual canonization process and whether or not somebody would be canonized. So if you want to get all MSNBC, brunch lib, sipping a mimosa and watching The View while completing the New York Times daily crossword puzzle about Donald Trump, we can call him the devil. And if he's the devil, he has many advocates. Unlike the original intention of the phrase, however, they aren't sincere advocates against, so much as sincere advocates for whatever they can say that he and his acolytes will just munch up like ghoulies. And there have been many propagandists through modern history that have played this role, not just to Trump, but the conservative movement in general. Almost more of a court jester to entertain the string pullers in power, going on Fox News to launder talking points to a voting bloc. Yet as Trump has continued to break down any of the norms around divisions between state and media, the distance between these talking points and the media mouthpieces has decreased dramatically to the point where it seems like Fox News is just shilling whatever talking points come approved straight from the White House. Which brings me to the latest jester to claim the top slot as the most viewed propaganda network, which brings me to the latest jester to claim the top spot at the most viewed propaganda network in America, Jesse Watters. Following in the footsteps of Tucker Carlson and Bill O'Reilly before him, Jesse Watters is another gormless, smug iteration in their mold, regurgitating reactionary talking points in diction fitting to lead an over 60 audience to fear any outsider of another color, gender, religion, nationality, etc. But I think it would be a mistake to simply call him an empty-headed propagandist and call it a day, because while he might seem tepid by the standards of the modern conservative media landscape, Watters' place as a cog in the propaganda machine shouldn't be overlooked. He is one of the most important pieces in that machine, and is currently a key part of normalizing openly radical ideas to an easily led audience. If Trump is the devil, then Jesse Watters is one of his biggest advocates, with a platform most other MAGA advocates would be jealous of. But before we get to that, we need to talk about something just as important as protecting your mind from propaganda, and that's protecting your data and how it's being used online. Online data brokers have your information, and you have no idea how it's being used. Everything about your life, including health information, addresses, IP info, your family members, and other intimately personal issues are being sold and used as data that targets you for ads, identity theft, AI training, and looking at the current state of headlines, there's no telling what else. Which is why I'm proud to say this video is sponsored by Incogni, a service I've used myself to scrub information from data broker sites and places you probably don't even realize your information is being sold right now. With Incogni, you can get your phone numbers, emails, addresses, and more scrubbed across the web. And with their family plan feature, you can add 3 additional people to that list with all of their accompanying information, allowing you to help prevent your parents who might not be great with tech from being targeted, or keep your kiddos safe while browsing the internet. And with Incogni's new custom removals feature, you can just enter in an address where you found your information for them to go and remove that information for you immediately. They send monthly requests to their database of more than 230 information brokers to remove your information for you, updating you every step of the way. And I have personally used Incogni and can verify just how impressive the resources available are. I know I was shocked how far and wide my data had been spread and used without me ever knowing it, and I'm so thankful to have a service like Incogni to help me take that back. And you can also take back your personal data with Incogni. Use code DEADDOMAIN at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. One more time, that is incogni.com/deaddomain for 60% off an annual plan, or use code DEADDOMAIN at the link down below. And with that out of the way, let's get back to some other nightmares. The first thing to know about Jesse Watters is that, much like Tucker, he comes from money and has never really wanted for anything. His grandmother, on his mother's side, was the owner of Better Homes and Gardens magazine, and his great-grandfather was the publisher of the Saturday Evening Post. He and Tucker actually have a lot in common. Both came from posh, wealthy upbringings and backgrounds in media, or in Tucker's case, in the literal CIA. Is that just a coincidence? Is there anything else there? It's probably not. Additionally, his father was the headmaster of an exclusive private rich kid school when he was growing up. And I think an interview with a former classmate from the Huffington Post in 2018 gives a lot of insight into who Jesse has always been. A belligerent, ignorant little shit. Quote, as part of the application process, Watters visited for something of a tryout, one of Watters' former classmates recalled. It was a school that a lot of people got rejected from, said the classmate. You kind of understood that you were there for the day. You had to present yourself a certain way. But Watters didn't appear to care, and it didn't matter either. He got in. Quote, obviously as the headmaster of Greenvale's son, he was never going to be rejected, said the classmate who, like many people HuffPost talked to for this story, requested anonymity out of fear of retaliation from Watters and Fox News. End quote. He graduated with a bachelor specializing in history and no journalism in sight, and then just went and got hired as a production assistant at Fox News in 2002. At the ripe age of 24, he rose through the ranks and was taken under the wing of noted sexual harasser Bill O'Reilly. In 2004, O'Reilly assigned Watters to go down to Alabama and ambush a judge who had given a light sentence to a sex offender. Quote, Watters eventually convinced the judge to do an interview, but he wasn't sure what to ask him once they sat down, he recalled. Quote, so I tell Bill, I said, Bill, I got this judge. He's going to talk to me on camera. What should I do? And Bill says, when the judge comes out, yell at him. Watters did as he was told, and the judge was flustered, he said, making for a digestible television moment that pleased O'Reilly. So, what do you get when you combine a spoiled kid floating through life with the mentorship of a craven, attention-obsessed, and fact-averse ideologue? You get Jesse Watters, who remains relatively unspectacular even by the standards of conservative media. As we will see in his future spotlights, he's not very smart. He's barely definable as charismatic. For all intents and purposes, he is a boring Long Island automaton. Yet to me, it is in that tedium that Watters is most dangerous. Insulated from any actual consequences for the things he says, he has only grown more incendiary over time, to the point where many of his modern talking points are all but indistinguishable between open calls for violence against certain groups. And because he's always been known to push the envelope, he simply smugly withdraws to the coward's position of, it's just a joke, or as shown when he did an astoundingly racist segment in 2016, it's tongue-in-cheek. We'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Chinatown thing. But before we move on, I also want to include this little tidbit from his early career to show that he's never really had any scruples, compunctions, or anything resembling journalistic standards. Again, from the HuffPost article, which I will link down below. Quote, a year after Watters went to Alabama for his first ambush interview, he pitched a story to O'Reilly about a sex-positive party at Brown University. Watters paid roughly $80 on the internet for a ticket and entered the party without identifying himself as a Fox News journalist. He and a producer then took video of half-naked undergraduates dancing together without obtaining their consent. Cool, dude. Just... what? Soon after, Jesse got his start as something a wannabe comedian or satirist or whatever, which is what he would claim during his man-on-the-street interviews that he became popular for. They became a staple of his appearances on Bill O'Reilly's show under a segment titled Waters' world.
Is China America's friend or enemy?
China, America? Of course are friends.
Can you guys take care of North Korea for us?
Wow, that is too much.
Yikes. I guess frenemies?
Frenemies? Do they call Chinese food in China just food?
And I want to be clear, if it wasn't incredibly obvious by now, Jesse Waters has never been interested in journalism. He's never been interested in finding answers. Guided by Bill O'Reilly, he found an interest that did align with his silver spoon upbringing, coasting on controversy no matter who it hurt, and it perfectly aligned with the evolving mission of Fox News at the time to do whatever it took to keep people angry and watching. And unsurprisingly, when called out on his bullshit, he's a total little bitch boy about it. Like when he was caught on camera in 2016 when a journalist used Waters' ambush jitsu against him, asking him at a party to apologize to a woman Waters and his crew had stalked for several days in 2009 under orders from Bill O'Reilly. And here's the video for your viewing pleasure.
Need Amanda Turkle for a second. Do you have a second?
Oh yeah, she loves me.
I know.
Yeah, bring her over, bring her over.
All right. She's saying there's no way it's going to happen unless you totally grovelly apologize.
Oh, bring her over, I'll apologize.
She won't come over. Come on over.
I'm not coming over. Tell her to come over, I'll apologize. I ambushed her because O'Reilly told me to get her because she said some really bad shit.
What she said?
I know your video.
Oh, of course I am.
She denigrated some rape victims, so I had to call her out. That's what we do.
That's chivalrous of you.
What do we do?
So in your chivalry, in his chivalry, he went out to the middle of Virginia and cornered her.
Are you videotaping?
Oh yeah, of course I'm videotaping this.
Get out of here.
The most infamous of his man on the street segments came in 2016, where he harassed Asian Americans in New York City's Chinatown. From the HuffPost article, Quanta Shimizu just wanted to get inside Chase Bank to pull out the cash he needed to buy his fried chicken, but the white man in the gray suit wouldn't let him pass. Standing on a corner in New York City's Chinatown, the man told Shimizu he just had a few quick questions he wanted to ask. The idea made Shimizu nervous. He had only moved to the US 3 years before, and his English was still rough. But the man in the suit wouldn't take no for an answer. He asked Shimizu, who is Japanese, what Chinese people thought about Donald Trump, then the Republican nominee for president. He asked if Japanese people looked down on the Chinese. Finally, he asked Shimizu if he knew karate. And when he was called out for this rightfully racist display from everybody ranging from New York City's mayor to actual journalists, he gave this non-apology. He said it was meant to be tongue-in-cheek and said he was sorry if anybody found offense. But he wasn't, because even by this point, Jesse had a history of incendiary incidents just like this one. In fact, it was the entire reason he was able to get such a platform. Like the time he was sent to Dearborn, Michigan and platformed a completely unfounded allegation that there was a Muslim honor killing, an incident which led to bomb threats in the community after it was on O'Reilly's show. And there are moments like this throughout Jesse Waters' career if you go looking. His timeline is peppered with incendiary and bigoted incidents which he and Bill O'Reilly both knew would be good for ratings, even if it caused controversy and, more importantly, targeted completely innocent people and communities. Like plenty of other right-wing commentators like Matt Walsh or Alex Jones, Waters' value to any ideological movement is certainly not in his sterling personality, but his brazenness, his willingness to be an asshole for a paycheck. And why shouldn't he? He is constantly rewarded for it. A year after the Chinatown segment, he was given his own Saturday night show on the Fox network and a co-hosting gig on The Five alongside fellow talentless smug ghoul Greg Gutfeld. He has been rewarded not just for his lack of any scruples or shame, but his incendiary stances. In 2023, he took over for Tucker Carlson after that shithead left the news network, and I don't know if the borderline comatose seniors that make up Fox's primary demographics could even tell the difference between one smug nepo baby white dude and the other, unless they noticed the distinct lack of bow ties. And essentially, this is the path that led Jesse Waters to being who he is today, or I should say, what he is today. A personality-less tool of the state who, under the guise of being an incendiary, envelope-pushing media maverick, simply launders open bigotry and now violence against whichever groups the conservative media is fixated on at any given moment, while also diverting attention from the contradictions and lies of Trump's presidency. Now, whether Jesse Watters believes the things he's saying or not, I've long since given up trying to determine who's a true believer. Because when it comes right down to it, it doesn't really matter to most of his viewers. What matters to his audience, which Fox and he know well by now, is what will get them really riled up, angry, and get them to keep coming back between ad breaks featuring boner pills and Trumpy bears. So nowadays, Jesse just shits out right through his mouth whatever thoughts come into his toilet bowl of a brain. And probably the most insulting thing about Jesse Watters is that, unlike other conspiracists or even former Fox News anchors like O'Reilly and Tucker, his approach is so scattershot it borders on the nonsensical. Like, Jesse Watters just said shit. In a sane world, or to a more discerning audience, Watters' lack of intellectual rigor, proof, sources, or anything resembling standards might give pause, but on Fox News, he is an open sewer of misinformation, conspiracies, and paranoia that just goes right into the brains of the audience. For example, he's spoken several times about QAnon,
where they would be tried for their crimes and then summarily hung. And then when that happened, it would be called the Great Awakening.
Okay. And isn't it also about the Trump fight with the deep state in terms of the illegal surveillance of the campaign, the he's sustained in terms of Comey and Mueller and Strzok and Page and all of that as well?
So there are many, many facets to this conspiracy theory, and one way to think about it is that it's a meta conspiracy theory where there are just lots of different conspiracy theories weaved together.
I'm doing this segment is because one of my good friends, he's a Q guy, and he's always telling me Q says this, you got to look into this.
And then there's the stuff that is just a joke, but is actual calls for violence that go right along with the public party positions and, more importantly, the aggrievement of his audience. Like the time in 2021 where he made a joke at Turning Point USA's conference saying Dr. Fauci needs to be, quote, ambushed and shot. But it's wordplay. You know, it's a bit. It's a jape, if you will. Now, some of his other incendiary bullshit isn't so easily written off as a joke, like when he all but encouraged the ongoing genocide of Muslims and the Muslim war and the Muslim world amid the IDF genocide of Palestinians in Gaza.
We, when I say we, I mean the West and Western technology, have created the Middle East. We made them rich. We got that oil out of the ground. Our military protects all of these oil shipments flying around the world, making them rich. We fund their military. We respect their kings. We kill their terrorists. Okay? But we've had it. We've had it with them. Obama, Trump, now Biden have tried to get the heck out of that stupid desert. Just as we're about to get out, because we have this great balance of power we're arranging, these crazy Muslim fanatics come in and massacre over 1,000 of our allies.
And he's also been fixated for a while on the conservative hate trend of the homeless population in America. In 2023, he said, quote, homelessness isn't about a lack of affordable housing. It's about drug addicts that want to wander around and live in tents on the sidewalk. So you can't coddle antisocial behavior. You can't subsidize antisocial behavior. You have to stigmatize it. You can't celebrate people with purple hair, nose rings, 4 kids with 4 different men who are dressed like trash and make them out to be some sort of cutting-edge heroes. You have to call them what they are. These are people that have failed in life and they're on their deathbed. And if we're not honest about the problem, we're not going to fix it. This statement from Watters is telling because it reveals just how inexperienced this silver spoon baby boy is with the real world, and also the people he continually targets in his audience, but also shows how little he cares about who he is marking as targets. He blends various stereotypes of Antifa, college professors, homeless people, and other groups often cited by conservative paranoia, but it's a formless mush, undigestible to anyone who isn't already primed to understand what he's saying. And in turn, his audience will walk away hating homeless people a little bit more for no actual reason. But then he's back to making just funny jokes, like the time he said generals would, quote, have their way with Kamala. And in 2024, he spread the idea that Taylor Swift was part of a clandestine CIA operation with no proof.
4 years ago, the Pentagon's Psychological Operations Unit floated turning Taylor Swift into an asset during a NATO meeting.
An asset to help the Democrats win. Yeah, that sounds plausible. And let's face it, the polls show Joe Biden certainly needs some help. So, Trump's favorite news channel assures us.
We all know what's happening with Taylor Swift is not organic and it's not natural. It's a coordinated marketing campaign by Democrats. Well, yeah, Soros might own her music, but the devil surely owns her soul.
This from the brilliant mind that same year had a segment where he invited a tarot reading psychic to predict the presidential election. And in 2025, he criticized how Biden ate ice cream. You remember what I was saying about how this guy is just kind of all over the place? And then he was called out for the bizarre assertion that working a desk job sitting behind a screen gives men estrogen and makes them women or something.
Hopefully, when you sit behind a screen all day, it makes you a woman. Studies have shown this. Studies have shown this. And if you're out working, like building robots like Harold, you are around other guys. You're not around HR ladies and lawyers.
What do you
that
do?
Gives you estrogen.
What do you
Let
do?
me finish, Judge.
You
I'm
sit
finished.
behind a screen.
Speaking of his opinions on masculinity, it shouldn't surprise you that Jesse is a chauvinist slimeball. In 2024, he married a woman 14 years his junior, Emma DeGiovine. This isn't really relevant, but what is relevant is that the relationship started in 2017, or at least that's when it was reported to Fox News, where Emma also worked, and as a result, she was moved to another show to avoid conflict of interest. But see, at the time, Jesse was still married to his first wife, Noelle Inguagitio. Noelle Inguagitio. Inguagitio. Noelle to his first wife, Noelle. This, by the way, was also when he joked about letting the air out of Emma's tires so he could, quote, drive her home. Just another totally normal dude making normal jokes. And I want to take a brief detour to talk about the actual quality of these jokes, because you may have noticed that he's not funny. Well, unless you have the underdeveloped frontal lobe of a 12-year-old bully from an 80s movie who still gets a kick out of swirlies and breaking kids' glasses. But the blurring of the lines between jokes or satire and news or whatever is intentional. The sentiments of what's being said, often leading viewers to a conclusion they should be in fear of one group or trust faithfully in the Trump-led state, can always be shifted to being a joke. Like the thing with Taylor Swift, he can just say, is just a joke when people look at him and are like, hey, dude, what the fuck? But then even after the half-hearted retraction, the sentiments will still remain with the audience. They'll be repeated and absorbed as actual news and therefore indistinguishable from fact. And after all of this rhetoric, spreading open hate, bigotry, misinformation, and conspiracy to an audience primed to see this slop as news, Waters has only grown more encouraged, and with the emboldening of conservative rhetoric, thanks to the Trump admin's posturing and publicity stunts, that has come with a lot more since the 2025 inauguration. Here's what's important to remember about Jesse. The entire reason I made this video on the smarmy caricature artist rendition of a cartoon weasel. He might not be news. He might not care who is hurt or offended or targeted by what he says, but his audience does. To people like Jesse, they have no real stake in politics. It's a game to him. Personally, I think he's just a very easily led rube who credulously believes and repeats anything that helps his bottom line. But even if he is a more thoughtful operator, you wouldn't be able to tell because not just of how deeply he drinks of the Trump Kool-Aid, but because of how much he hawks it to his audience. An audience that does not share his material positions, by the way. He's so insulated from financial disaster that he will never be destitute, and probably won't even be that affected if the economy were to collapse. But to his audience, many of whom aren't rich or anywhere near that wealthy, What Jesse says isn't just their window to the world outside, but a window to the potential world they should want. So when he goes on air and is one of the first news personalities to float the idea that the US should invade Canada for some reason, while the rest of the world says, hey, what the fuck, man? His captive audience of boomers and Gen Xers will be given a new talking point to feed their hunger for ideology, something the MAGA base is constantly starving for because Trump doesn't actually have any real ideas or policies outside of playing the hits that have gotten him cheers at rallies for the last decade. And there is something additionally to be said about the lack of any coherent or organized plans or designs from the Trump admin, that they have to repeatedly rely on publicity stunts organized by incompetent and inexperienced loyalty hires like RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth. But with people like Jesse Waters running interference for the audience, Trump's MAGA base gets to ward off that cognitive dissonance just a little bit longer. I could have saved a lot of time and effort if I just started the video off by summarizing Jesse Waters' job is jangling keys in front of an audience to present them with propaganda that will keep them invested. And lately, that's been focused on whatever the Trump admin wants. Hello, everybody. Editing Jordan here. I want to stop in for a brief interjection. This video was written and recorded entirely before Charlie Kirk was shot, and therefore Jesse Waters' part in the ongoing propaganda effort to clamp down on free speech in America, particularly against the left in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, wasn't part of the original script, but I absolutely cannot talk about his place in the modern propaganda machine without the absolute bullshit he continues spewing. He was one of the very first voices literally calling for words like war, using Charlie's death before the body was even cold for his own propaganda mill. So, in case you haven't seen those clips floating around online, here they are.
And if guys like Charlie are targets for assassination, we all are. Charlie Kirk's just like you and me. We speak our minds, we speak from the heart, we tell the truth because we believe in the country and everything that it was founded on. Charlie had the spirit of our founders. Charlie spoke the truth. He said what he felt, and they killed him for it. The message is shut your mouth. If you can be murdered for speaking your mind in America, then America's done. We might as well live in the dark ages. And this isn't the first time this has happened. This is just the worst time. They shot Trump. They went to Kavanaugh's house with a rifle. They're firebombing Elon's cars, rioting in LA. Trans shooters are killing our kids. They just plugged 2 Jews outside the embassy in our capital. Hell, Rand Paul got his ribs broken by his neighbor. ICE agents have to wear masks because their families are getting death threats. It's officially over now. After today, we're not taking it anymore. They're telling us we're at war.
He laundered blatant lies about the extrajudicial deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to a Salvadoran prison camp. He's been openly spreading violent rhetoric about mentally ill and homeless people, like I showed in 2023, extolling Trump's brave crusade to clean up American cities despite the administration's unilateral rollbacks on public health care and funding local resources that will actually help the systemic problems. Recently, he's effusively praised the incredibly unqualified RFK Jr. after an embarrassing showing, attempting to sell RFK to the Fox audience as some kind of kind-hearted fitness druid and not a piece of mummified jerky from the late 1800s that fell into a blue jean factory.
Yeah. And he's probably the best-looking one out there. Mm-hmm. But these people oversaw an obesity epidemic, a birth rate plummeting, testosterone plummeting, autism skyrocketing, and they did nothing about it. And then they get on TV and they act like this guy is the bad guy. This guy was hired to clean house. If he came in and didn't fire anybody from these agencies, he should be fired. That's what this whole agenda is about. You take these people who industry puts there, they rubber stamp everything from food additives to vaccines so it's profitable for the industry, and then they destroy any evidence that a study has. He came out and said they were destroying evidence of a study that showed black kids were getting side effects from a shot they didn't need, and the Democrat senators didn't even care.
He's also been pushing the popular blatant lies about there being any kind of trans shooter epidemic in the wake of the recent mass shooting tragedy in Minneapolis. But would you believe it, as a representative of the party that definitely cares about defending children, he's also been in lockstep with the Trump admin on denying the validity of the Epstein files that link back to Donald Trump. He tested the waters, questioning the narrative, but since that initial wave of speculation, has been repeating Trump's narrative. The Epstein files are a Democrat hoax. This, by the way, was after Waters spread years of conspiracies parroting ideas about Epstein and encouraging the files to be declassified. This is a guy who's, important to remember, definitely believes in Q shit, at least to some extent. And this is beside the rampant dear leader sycophantry, like claiming Trump to be some kind of kind-hearted man with a childlike wonder of the world. Because it's not just the news he constructs and fabricates for his viewers, but an entire world to go with that news. In Waters' world, it's not enough to call out Democrats and political enemies, but it needs to be additionally driven home that his side, the conservative side, and its authoritarian mission isn't just good, but it's the absolute best. It's not surprising that Trump loves Waters so much and has been shown watching the show on several occasions, because thus far, this is the closest Trump has gotten to a dear leader style North Korean propaganda that he still probably has wet dreams about and has since he visited Pyongyang. And this brings me back to how I started this little dive into the shallow pool that is Waterworld. Who is more harmful, the devil or the person who advocates for him? Because if Fox News has shown anything, it's that there are always more overly Botoxed faces you can park in front of a camera to read propaganda. Who Jesse is doesn't matter, but his utility to the MAGA movement does. Without Jesse and any other number of loudmouth, shameless ghouls, conservative politicians' lasso on their audience would unwind. One thing I hear a lot on social media is how if you're on the left, you must get all your news from CNN or MSNBC. You must love Rachel Maddow and the fake news media. And I think that critique reveals a lot, because I don't know anyone on the left, even among liberals, who overly rely on those programs or sources. Maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's more common in an older set. But to me, it seems like that line of thinking reveals just how much the audiences of places like Fox or One America News get their worldview. Not just their information, but their opinions, fixation, and ideology from these non-news networks. And it is a problem that will only continue to get worse as more people attempt to coddle and cozy up to dear leader Trump, even as the cognitive dissonance rift grows between what his supporters were promised and the realities they see his administration exacting on this country. The economy sucks, citizens are being targeted, war crimes in broad daylight, and Trump can't stop trying to avoid suspicion about the Epstein files in the most suspicious ways possible. But no matter what heinous shit happens, as long as we have propagandists like Jesse Waters helping the devil, there will always be some kind of distraction to keep those supporters in line. He's a tool, in more ways than one. But just because his place is comfortably behind a desk and repeating propaganda doesn't mean he's not dangerous. And one more time, don't forget, you can take your personal data back with Incogni using code DEADDOMAIN or going to incogni.com/deaddomain to get 60% off an annual plan. Don't forget, that is incogni.com/deaddomain, or click on the link down below using code DEADDOMAIN to get 60% off an annual plan.